Hey, you geeks! I just read The Great Divorce without anyone recommending it to me, unlike earlier C.S. Lewis books I've covered on this channel. I've heard The Great Divorce mentioned a few times, but my immediate circle of friends have been relatively mum about the whole thing.
Anyone know the effects?
So this video's theme, 10 things no one ever told me about The Great Divorce, is really low-hanging fruit. But before we get into that, one last reminder, next week I'll begin doing weekly Wheel of Time episode reviews, then returning to my normal balance of booktube and philosophy in January. So please subscribe for all that. A missing piece. I have no idea how no one, not even you, my lovely viewers, neglected to tell me that Lewis wrote a bus tour of heaven. In all of my various videos of heavenly bus tours, talking about the Divine Comedy, Brandon Sanderson, and even C.S. Lewis. This book unites my 3 favorite topics in ways I had never imagined. Particularly, the sane would do no good if they made themselves mad to help madmen. It answers so many questions, yet poses so many more. Code. Lewis's love for direct allegory is famous. I've tried to make my dislike for blatant allegory equally clear. This book brings it to a whole new level.
Fine, well, it was allegorical.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
Lewis goes from giving straight-up philosophy lectures to backing off and saying he actually has no idea what he's talking about. And then killer unicorns attack. I feel like he knows exactly what he's saying and has applied a one-to-one allegorical frame to the concept, like it's some sort of code that I, the reader, do not have a key for. So I have no idea what he's actually talking about either. Here lies my best guess. The circle is broken. Lewis starts saying that this is not a circular book. We are not living in a world where all roads are radii of a circle, and where all, if followed long enough, will therefore draw gradually nearer and finally meet in the center. Lewis writes to contradict William Blake's writing The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which apparently says there's no difference between the two. Lewis's imagination is much more linear. His characters are always either moving closer or further away from heaven, which they are free to dither between after death? It's pure fantasy. Lewis's premise that the damned can take field trips to heaven is, from my perspective, theologically ridiculous. He goes so far as to mix in his theory on how God acts out of time, then retroactively changes reality, to claim that if the damned leave the gray town behind, then it would not have been hell. To any that leaves it, it is purgatory. And perhaps ye better not call this country heaven, not deep heaven, ye understand. Which, frankly,
sounds like orc mischief to me.
Yet, because I find it ridiculous, I'm able to enjoy it as fantasy and look for deeper truths on which we can agree. Hell is quite dull. As astute modernist Billy Joel once wrote,
They say there's a heaven for those who will wait, and some say it's better, but I say it ain't.
I wonder if he knew how perfectly he embodied the voices of all the damned spirits in C.S. Lewis's vision of hell. Each spirit has one thing they refuse to admit they are wrong about. There's the free thinker who rejects heaven as a great conspiracy, the grumble who can't stop complaining in time to enjoy reality. Then there's the bereaved mother who cannot love. That is truly a twisted scene.
gotta let go. I can't.
Though we start out with the likes of Napoleon, who never made it to the bus because he's pacing in hell, blaming everyone else for his problems, as Cage the Elephant once said.
Said there ain't no rest for the wicked.
Is this a stable? The reason I suppose my friends never brought up this book is because we read Tolkien's Leaf by Niggle, where Tolkien imagines purgatory in part as a field before the mountains of heaven. The similarities between Tolkien's and Lewis's visions are uncanny, though the differences are vast. Yet I recognize this field from a deeper place than my adult reading of Tolkien. I had seen it before, once, long, long ago.
Déjà vu.
In the last battle, which marks the beginning of the end of my childhood, Lucy runs across this plain and up the waterfall in a matter of paragraphs. I suppose it's small recompense to know the grass didn't hurt her feet, though this field has a place of infamy in my memory. Quite ironically, since it is here Lewis argues that we should become like children again. Heaven's a journey? I've commended Lewis for his apt description of hell. Now let me complain about his vision of heaven. It's not that enticing. Lewis starts saying that it is the ultimate end, conveyed in a conversation between one damned soul and his mentor. If to travel hopefully is better than to arrive were true, how could anyone travel hopefully? There is nothing to hope for. Yet there seems to be no rest for the weary. As sainted by Lewis, George MacDonald explains, every one of us lives only to journey further and further into the mountains, which philosophically doesn't seem to work with what Lewis said earlier. I'm sure Lewis can distinguish between the journeys as one of hope and one of joy, yet I still don't get why he made heaven a journey also. What is the end? Where is the destination? Booktubers beware. As in the Screwtape Letters, Lewis seems to be aware of the type of intelligentsia who would one day become booktube sensations. Good old George MacDonald warns us. Did you never know of a lover of books that, with all his first editions and signed copies, had lost the power to read them? It is the subtlest of all the snares. Well, it's a good thing I never stroked my Sanderson leather-bound's cooing.
It's mine.
My own.
My precious.
Or was hesitant to lend them out on account of them being collectibles. Nope, never happened. The difference is substantial. Lewis says saintly George MacDonald was his Beatrice, though I think he's more of this book's Virgil if Virgil had ever seen heaven. Unlike Dante, Lewis, in his linear way of thinking, could not have been led to heaven by someone who remained mortally flawed after death. That's a tangent. Lewis recognizes George as a saint because he appears as an enthroned and shining god, whose ageless spirit weighed upon mine like a burden of solid gold. Yet at the very same moment, here was a weather-beaten man, one who might have been a shepherd. And it's statements like this, and the surreal chessboard surrounded by godmen, which reinforces to me that Lewis is speaking in a metaphor. He could not possibly mean it literally.
You used a metaphor on Timon? He takes things literally.
According to Lewis, the saved get their godlike bodies by being reborn in the substance of divine joy and love. There's one great saintly woman who is surrounded by a heavenly procession, who is so full of joy that she is joy and enrobed in its substance. As she explains, I am full now, not empty. I am in love himself, not lonely, strong, not weak. This woman's whole purpose is to plead with her husband to save him from hell. I think she's more of a Beatrice, if Beatrice could ever have been said to suffer fools. Meanwhile, Lewis describes the damned as insubstantial, as they lack the substance of divine joy, which is why they are literally ghosts. Bonus notion: Lewis allows for dogs in his heaven, provided they come with a person of true heavenly grace. Lewis is a lightweight. In comparing Lewis's and Dante's trips to heaven and Living to Tell the Tale, Lewis is very meek and mild about it. He merely stands in what he imagines is heaven's anteroom and makes it clear that he's not really there. For Georgie tells him, "And if ye come to tell of what ye have seen, make it plain that it was but a dream. See ye make it very plain. Give no poor fool the pretext to think ye are claiming knowledge of what no mortal knows." Meanwhile, Dante lets us know in no uncertain terms that he, like Odysseus and Aeneas, he actually went to hell. He climbed Mount Purgatory, and he could bear to see the true divine presence. There are many things you can say about Dante, but bold AF is at the top of my list. Back to Lewis, who could not bear to face the dawn, implicitly lest he be burned like Zeus's lovers. He instead wakes up.
They're still here. I'm still here.
I'm not sure which man's approach to the divine presence is better. Neither, I think, are entirely wrong, but I find the comparison humorous, which I hope is the very least this video has been for you. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.